There is a supplement that has been studied for decades in hundreds of trials by researchers all over the world, and it is one of the safest and most effective nutritional interventions ever tested. It helps build muscle, it supports brain function, it improves strength, and it has been shown to work in people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond. And yet, if you are over 50, you have almost certainly been told it is only for young bodybuilders. You may have dismissed it as gym culture. You may have thought it was dangerous for your kidneys, or that it was too late for it to do you any good. Every one of those assumptions is wrong, and the evidence has been clear for years. The supplement is creatine, and it may be the single most underused health intervention available to people over 50. In this video, we're going to go through what creatine actually is, how it works at the cellular level, the compelling research on muscle and strength after 50, the emerging and genuinely exciting research on brain health, the common myths that have kept people away from it, and a simple, practical guide to using it safely and effectively. First, what is creatine, and why does your body even need it? Creatine is not a drug, and it is not a synthetic chemical invented in a laboratory. It is a natural compound that your body produces every day, primarily in your liver and kidneys, and it is found naturally in food, particularly in meat and fish. Your body makes about 1 gram of creatine per day, and if you eat a typical diet that includes animal products, you get another gram or so from food. Your muscles store this creatine in a specific form, creatine phosphate, and that storage is where the magic happens. Here is the cellular mechanism. Every time your muscle contracts, it uses a molecule called ATP for energy. ATP is the fuel of all cellular work, but your muscle cells only hold enough ATP for a few seconds of intense effort. When you lift a weight, sprint, climb stairs, or do anything that requires a sudden burst of force, your ATP supply runs out almost immediately. This is where creatine phosphate comes in. Creatine phosphate acts as a rapid recharge system. It donates a phosphate group to ADP, turning it back into ATP almost instantly, which allows your muscles to keep contracting for several more seconds. In simple terms, creatine gives your muscles a bigger battery and a faster charger. More stored creatine means more energy for short, intense efforts, which means you can lift heavier, do more repetitions, and recover faster between sets. And that is the foundation of everything creatine does. It does not build muscle by itself. It gives you the energy to do more work, and more work builds muscle. That is the mechanism, and it is the reason creatine is one of the most studied supplements in the history of sports science, with hundreds of published studies behind it. And here is the part that makes creatine especially relevant after 50. Your natural creatine stores decline with age. Studies have shown that older adults tend to have lower muscle creatine concentrations than younger adults, even after adjusting for muscle mass, and there are two likely reasons. The first is diet. As people age, they often eat less meat and fish, sometimes for cost, sometimes for digestion, sometimes because they were told red meat is unhealthy, and those are exactly the dietary sources of creatine. People who eat little or no animal protein, including vegetarians, consistently have the lowest creatine stores, and they tend to show the largest responses to supplementation because they have the most room to improve. The second reason is that the transport system that pulls creatine from your blood into your muscles becomes less efficient with age. The result is that the average person over 50 is running their muscle and brain energy systems with a smaller battery than they did at 30, and they do not know it. Supplementation restores those stores. And in many studies, older adults who supplement reach the same muscle creatine levels as younger athletes. You are not trying to gain an unfair advantage. You are restoring a level that your own body should have. And that is a very different framing from the bodybuilder stereotype. So what does the research say about creatine and aging? This is where the picture gets genuinely exciting, because the benefits are largest in exactly the population that needs them most. After 50, your muscle mass declines at a rate of about 1 to 2% per year, a process called sarcopenia, and your strength declines even faster. This is not just a cosmetic problem. Muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of independence in older age. It determines your balance, your mobility, your metabolic health, and your ability to recover from illness or injury. The loss of muscle is a major driver of frailty, falls, and the loss of independence that so many people fear. Now, the research on creatine and aging has been reviewed in multiple meta-analyses, which combine the results of many individual trials, and the findings are consistent. When older adults, people in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, combine creatine supplementation with resistance training, they gain significantly more muscle mass and strength than people who do the same training without creatine. The effect is not tiny. Studies have repeatedly shown meaningful differences in lean mass and in measures of strength like leg press and chest press between the creatine group and the placebo group. And importantly, the benefits show up even in people who are not athletes, not bodybuilders, and not particularly fit. One of the most important findings is that creatine appears to help people who are starting from a low base, which is exactly the situation many people over 50 find themselves in. It amplifies the response to training, so the work you are already doing or the work you are about to start produces better results. The second major benefit of creatine is the one that is generating the most excitement in the research community, and it is the reason this topic deserves attention far beyond the gym. Creatine is not just for muscle, it is also for the brain. Your brain uses the exact same ATP energy system as your muscles, and it has its own creatine stores. In fact, the brain is one of the most energy-hungry organs in your body, consuming about 20% of your total energy, and it relies on creatine phosphate to maintain energy during periods of high demand. Research on creatine and cognition is still emerging, but the results so far are promising. Studies in people under cognitive stress, such as sleep deprivation, have found that creatine supplementation improves performance on memory and reasoning tasks. Studies in older adults have found improvements in memory and processing speed. And a meta-analysis published in a peer-reviewed journal in the last few years found that creatine supplementation improved memory in older adults compared to placebo. The mechanism is logical. By increasing the energy buffer available to brain cells, creatine helps them maintain function during demanding cognitive tasks and potentially protects them during periods of metabolic stress. Researchers are now studying creatine as a potential protective strategy for age-related cognitive decline. And while the evidence is not yet definitive, it is promising enough that many researchers in the field take it themselves. This is a supplement that may help you think clearly, remember more, and protect your brain, in addition to rebuilding your muscle. That combination is rare, and it is why creatine deserves a place in the conversation about healthy aging. And the research suggests there are additional benefits worth mentioning because they fill in the rest of the picture. One area is bone health. Since creatine allows you to lift heavier and train with more total volume, it indirectly strengthens bone because bone responds to the mechanical load placed on it, and several studies have found that creatine combined with resistance training improves bone mineral density in older adults compared to training alone. Another area is blood sugar control. Muscle is the largest consumer of glucose in your body, and creatine's effect on muscle mass and muscle function supports better glucose disposal. Some studies have found that creatine supplementation improves glucose tolerance, particularly when combined with exercise, which matters in a population where insulin resistance becomes increasingly common. There is also research on recovery. Creatine has been shown to reduce muscle damage and inflammation after intense exercise, and it may help with recovery after periods of inactivity, which is relevant for anyone who has been through a hospital stay or an injury. And there is emerging research on creatine and falls, the great threat to independence. In later life, since falls are driven by weakness, poor balance, and low muscle mass, all of which creatine-supported training directly addresses. None of these benefits are dramatic on their own, but they compound. The picture that emerges is a supplement that supports the entire system that keeps you independent. Muscle, bone, brain, and metabolism. That is a remarkably broad profile for a compound that costs pennies per day. Now let me address the elephant in the room, because it is the reason most people over 50 have stayed away from creatine for years. The belief that creatine damages your kidneys. This is the most persistent myth in the entire supplement world, and it is not supported by the evidence. The concern arose because creatine is broken down into a waste product called creatinine, and creatinine is the marker doctors use to estimate kidney function. When you supplement with creatine, your creatinine levels rise, and people misinterpreted that rise as kidney damage. But a rise in creatinine from creatine supplementation is not damage. It is simply more creatine being processed, and the kidneys are handling it normally. The extensive research on creatine, including studies lasting multiple years, has found no evidence of kidney damage in healthy people taking recommended doses. Large reviews of the safety data have repeatedly concluded that creatine is safe for healthy individuals at standard doses. The caveat, and it is an important one, is that if you already have kidney disease, you should not start creatine without talking to your doctor first, because your kidney's ability to excrete the byproducts is compromised. But for a healthy person with normal kidney function, the fear of kidney damage is exactly that, a fear, not a fact. And it has kept millions of older adults from one of the most evidence-supported supplements available. There are a couple of other myths worth clearing up, because they contribute to the same pattern of avoidance. The first is that creatine makes you gain fat, or that it is only for bulking up. Creatine does cause a small weight gain in the first week or two, usually 1 to 2 kilograms, but that weight is water and glycogen stored inside your muscle cells, not fat. It actually makes muscles look fuller and more hydrated, and it is not associated with fat gain. The second myth is that you need to load creatine with massive doses, and that you need to cycle it on and off. Neither is true. The modern, research-supported approach is simple. Take 3 to 5 grams of creatine monohydrate every day, and within 3 to 4 weeks, your muscle stores are fully saturated. No loading phase is necessary, and cycling is not supported by the evidence. Some people do a loading phase of 20 grams per day for a week to saturate faster, but it is optional and can cause stomach upset, so the daily low dose is the better choice for most people. The third myth is that you need a fancy or expensive form of creatine. You do not. Creatine monohydrate, the plain powder that has been studied for decades, is the form with the most evidence behind it, and it is also the cheapest. The fancy patented forms are marketing, not science. So let me put this together into a practical guide, because the details matter, and they are simpler than most people expect. First, choose creatine monohydrate in powder form. It is the most studied, the most effective, and the most affordable. Second, take 3 to 5 grams per day, every day, including rest days, because the goal is to keep your muscle stores saturated, and that requires daily intake, not just on training days. There is no magic time of day. Creatine does not have a stimulant effect, so it does not matter whether you take it in the morning or evening, although taking it with a meal or mixed into a drink is the easiest way to remember it. It dissolves well in water, juice, or a smoothie, and taking it with some carbohydrates may improve uptake slightly, though this is a minor effect and not essential. Third, be consistent for at least 3 to 4 weeks before judging results, because that is how long it takes to saturate your muscles. Fourth, and this is critical, creatine is not a substitute for training. The research is clear that creatine amplifies the benefits of resistance training, but it does not replace it. You still need to do the work. 2 to 3 sessions of resistance training per week, even body weight exercises, and resistance bands combined with daily creatine is the formula that produces the strongest results. And fifth, if you have kidney disease, a history of kidney problems, or any condition that affects your kidneys, talk to your doctor before starting and get your kidney function tested if you have never had it checked. For everyone else, the safety record is one of the best in the supplement industry, with decades of research behind it. Let me also give you a realistic picture of what to expect, because managing expectations is the difference between a habit that sticks and one that is abandoned. In the first 1 to 2 weeks, you may notice nothing at all, or you may notice a slight increase in muscle fullness and a small bump on the scale, which is the water and glycogen moving into your muscles. A sign the creatine is being absorbed, not a sign of fat gain. Around week 3 to 4, when your stores are saturated, you will start to notice the performance effects during training, an extra rep or two on your last set, faster recovery between sets, and less soreness the day after. These may sound small, but over months of training, An extra rep on every set is exactly how muscle growth accumulates. The cognitive effects, if you experience them, tend to be more subtle, better recall, less mental fatigue during demanding tasks, and they may take longer to notice. So keep a simple baseline in your head and compare over months, not days. If you stop taking creatine, the effects gradually fade over a few weeks as your stores return to baseline, but there is no withdrawal, no crash, and no harm, which is another sign of how benign this supplement is. And one final practical note on combining creatine with the rest of your routine. Creatine pairs naturally with adequate protein because both support the same goal of rebuilding muscle, and it works well alongside the other interventions we discuss on this channel, like after meal walks and resistance training. It is not in competition with any of them. It is a force multiplier for the work you are already doing. Now, a word on quality, because this matters more than most people realize. The supplement industry is loosely regulated, and creatine is one of the most counterfeited and adulterated supplements on the market, precisely because it is so popular. Some cheap products contain less creatine than the label claims, and some contain fillers or contaminants. The simple safeguard is to choose creatine monohydrate from a reputable brand that uses third-party testing, and many companies now publish their certificates of analysis online, which verify that the product actually contains what the label says and nothing else. Creatine monohydrate is a simple molecule. It is inexpensive to produce, and there is no reason to pay premium prices for it. But there is every reason to buy from a brand you can verify. This is one of those places where a few minutes of research prevents months of wasted money on a product that may not even contain creatine. There is one more thing worth saying, and it is the part that connects all of this to the bigger picture of healthy aging. The research on creatine points to something profound about how we should think about aging. The decline in muscle and strength after 50 is often treated as inevitable, something to accept and accommodate. But the evidence increasingly shows that much of that decline is not inevitable. It is the result of a declining stimulus, less physical demand, less muscle use, and the body adapting to that lower demand. Creatine is powerful precisely because it makes the stimulus more effective. It turns the work you do into more muscle, and more muscle means more independence, more metabolic health, better blood sugar control, stronger bones, and a higher quality of life in the decades ahead. Combined with resistance training, good nutrition, and the other habits we talk about on this channel, creatine is one of the most evidence-supported, cost-effective, and underused tools available to people over 50. It is not a miracle, and it will not do the work for you. But it will make the work you do count for more, in your muscles and in your brain. And in a world where most of what is sold to aging adults is hype, that is a genuinely rare thing. A supplement that has been tested for decades, that is safe, that is cheap, and that works. If you have been waiting for a sign to take your muscle and brain health seriously after 50, this is it. Start with the training, add the creatine, and give your body the support